Man, week's moving right along here. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well there. We are talking tropics. I'm joined by Ross Muma of where are you at? WTLV. Going to get that right. Jacksonville, Florida. And Brianna Mallory. She's up in Columbia, South Carolina at WLTX. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Howdy. Happy Thursday to you.
I can't believe it's Thursday already. When I said it out loud, I was like, wow, really already? So we've got quite a bit to talk about today. We've got obviously Erin, which we've been talking about, which is, by the way, strengthening as we speak. But we also have a wave in the Gulf. So we need to talk about all of that. And Ross, if you just want to get us started, we'll show the big picture right now. And yeah, we've got kind of one in the Gulf and one out in the Central Atlantic to deal with.
Yeah, so, I mean, Tropical Storm Erin's been the talking point all week, right? But the Gulf and the Bay of Campeche specifically is where the National Hurricane Center is also watching. The 8 p.m. advisory just came out, now actually given a 50% chance of development over the next 2 days and over the next 7 days as well. So overall, still just kind of a large area or a cluster of showers and thunderstorms there in the western, portion of the Gulf. But this is going to be headed towards the northern part of Mexico. Brownsville up to Corpus Christi could be seeing some rain, and that seems to be the overall track to the northwest at about 17 miles per hour. So it is moving rather quickly, but the pressure not all that terrible, only at 1,011 millibars right now. Currently, sustained winds only at 30 miles per hour, so still has a ways to go. Looks kind of like a tropical depression currently, or perhaps a subtropical depression. So we will see if that comes to, fruition here within the next 24 hours or so. But nonetheless, looks like Invest 98L is pretty much just going to move on shore and bring some beneficial rain, actually, to portions of South Texas that has been somewhat dry here as of late. Bobby?
Yeah, Recon was out there this afternoon into it, and they couldn't find a well-organized, at least, low-level circulation. That's the case. You couldn't see the low levels because there's clouds over top. So you had what's called a central dense overcast. A CDO is one thing you need, but you also need that low-level swirl. They couldn't find it, so it's not quite organized enough. But as Ross was saying, they bumped it up from a 40% to a 50% chance. This is the model, and you can see by tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, it's got quite a bit of moisture just offshore. And what the Hurricane Center says is, you see this right here? That is kind of where the model is showing it. They barely show a close low here. But they're saying that it's here now, and by the time it gets up here tomorrow afternoon, it might end up being a depression. Right? It's just very close to land. It's moving so quickly, as Ross was saying as well. And then that's it. Look at that. The model by 10 o'clock on Friday doesn't have much with it. If it were to get a name, it would be Fernand. That's tough to do at this particular point, especially if it's not really organized and it's moving so quick, but that is the next name on the list. Okay, Brianna, next storm up, Tropical Storm Erin.
Right now, yes, Erin is now 999 millibars, so it is showing signs of weakening. That pressure is dropping. The winds are at 70 miles per hour, and it's moving due west at 17 miles per hour. So definitely getting stronger as it pushes to the west, but we are going to continue to track where that's heading. We could have a hurricane from this by late tonight at that 11 o'clock update because it is still strengthening very quickly. By tomorrow afternoon, we could still see that around 75 mile per hour winds. And as it pushes through to the weekend, it's going to take a northwestern shift, and it's supposed to slide just north of the Caribbean islands. But remember, the center of this could be anywhere within that cone of, we call it the cone of uncertainty. And it's still expected, even into the start of next week, likely to become the first major hurricane, the first hurricane of the season, as winds get over 120, 125 miles per hour by Tuesday afternoon. So even as it pushes it's still expected to move between Bermuda and the coast of the U.S., but we could still see impacts from this system as it gets closer into next week.
Yeah, and
so we already have for the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean islands, tropical storm watches already in place for many areas. And as this does push closer and right now, part of those islands going to be dealing with potentially tropical storm conditions, high winds as well possible with these from that system. They could get some high waves as well as it gets closer to them, and we could even deal with some of those waves here along the coastlines of us, but going to be seeing those right there, right before the British Virgin Islands, just south of there, seeing those watches in place. So we're definitely going to see more of these coming out.
It's a tropical storm watch for Anguilla, Barbuda, St. Martin, St. Bart's, Saba, St. Eustatius, and Saint Martin, which I spent time on St. Martin. I just didn't. I knew some people call it Saint Martin, but actually it's French on the north side, Dutch on the south side of the island, and they call the south side Saint Martin. So you see two different places on the Hurricane Center site saying that they have watches, but it's for the same
Impressive,
island.
Bobby. Some firsthand knowledge from you. I like it.
Right, yeah. And my liver has recovered from that trip, too, so we're looking good. All right, Brianna, tell us about the wind. So this map right here is telling us a couple different things. The colors tell us the probability of seeing tropical storm force winds, right? Anything from 39 to 73 miles per hour. And then you can see the other lines tell us the timing. So what are we looking at here, Brianna?
Yeah, obviously the brighter red colors, higher chance of those tropical storm winds. Thankfully, or right now, it looks like the highest probabilities are going to stay north of the Caribbean islands, but still pretty good, 40% chance for those islands, and which is why they have those tropical storm watches in place for those areas already ahead of this system.
Yeah, and Puerto Rico is kind of on the cusp here. We were talking that the Virgin Islands didn't have it. I got a feeling that the 11 o'clock update tonight, it doesn't look like they added anything for 8 o'clock, but the 11 o'clock update tonight, they will probably add the U.S. Virgin Islands, even the British Virgin Islands, just because they're in that same probability as our Anguilla and St. Martin. Now, the timing on that would be Saturday. So if you have friends or family that live in the islands, they want to have all what this is saying. We could see winds anywhere from 40 to about 73 miles per hour, right? The exact numbers aren't out yet, but I would be guessing it's probably in the 40s and 50s with some gusts, right? But that would be Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. And what I always tell people to do is to have your preps done the day before it gets dark. So because that's going to be in the morning on Saturday morning, 8 a.m., you would want your preps done by Friday night sunset. It's just harder to do things in the dark, and so it makes it easier if you get them done. So that means you want to plan Friday if you're going to make any preps. This is nothing major at this point. We'll have to watch the track. It comes further south, you get more wind, but right now it looks like it's in the tropical storm force wind range. But then as we get into Saturday afternoon at 8 o'clock, you can see it's already into the Virgin Islands, or at least a chance for it, 40% chance, right? So that is going to change. Now, let's go out a little bit further here, because we haven't talked about the Turks and Caicos, which is down in here, and then you've got the Bahamas, but they're out there in this, 10 to 20, maybe 30% chance for parts of the Turks and Caicos for just tropical storm force winds, okay? Hurricane force winds are going to be out here near the center, so things look pretty good right there. And right now, this is a graphic from the Hurricane Center. It just doesn't go out that far to get us, a look at the Carolinas. But Bermuda, I think Bermuda more than anything else is going to have to worry about this thing. Okay, so here's what's been happening. We've been showing you this. This is the water temperature. Anything in red is above 80 degrees, and then it just gets warmer and warmer. Look at all that warm air right there, or warm water, I should say, mid-80s. This started over warm water, and then it went over cooler water, the Cape Verdes, and then stayed over it. That's why it's been 45, 50 mile per hour winds, and all of a sudden today, 55, 60, 70 mile per hour winds right now, okay? And then if you look at the forecast track, it's nothing but warm water, all right? That's gonna get it well into the mid-80s, 86, perhaps almost 87 degrees in some spots in the year. And the warmer that water, the more fuel you have for the storm. Now, where's it going? These are the forecast models for the global models, and you can see actually fairly decent agreement in here. That's actually pretty good for a turn. You expect them to be tight in here, right? And then when the turn happens, storm slows down a little bit. Some are going to say earlier, some are going to say later, and this does, but overall they're in fairly good agreement. Let's take a look at the combination of the European model and the GFS, and you can really see they're actually looking pretty good right now. And that should be the case, right? By the way, Recon's out there right now. Should have mentioned that. And when they get that data going into these models, this is really going to help the models get more accurate. But by Monday, 8 o'clock, that looks a little low to me. It's going to be sitting somewhere here east of the Bahamas. But both models suggest it's east of there. Okay, the highest winds will be offshore. Now, Wednesday morning, here we are. Europeans a little bit further to the west. The GFS a little bit slower and a little bit more towards the east. Then we get up to 5 o'clock Thursday morning, so late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And this, Ross, this is huge because yesterday wasn't the European was almost near Hatteras at one point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of had that westerly bias over the last day or so. And I mean, even if it's somewhere between the Euro and the American GFS model, or if it is the European, I still think Cape Hatteras, really Wilmington up through the Outer Banks, are going to see probably the worst, quote unquote, worst of the storm. Mm-hmm. I think they have the best chance to perhaps see a tropical storm watch or warning. Whether that actually occurs, a lot of time before we get to that point, of course. But I do think, the Outer Banks probably going to see, the worst winds, the worst surf there, as well. And we talked about this the last couple of days too, right? Up towards the Virginia Beach. Yeah. Maryland, Delaware, Dewey Beach, or Ocean City, Maryland, Atlantic City in New Jersey, Cape May. I mean, all of those places are also going to be experiencing some pretty rough surf, some big swells coming off of this storm as it moves past to the east. So, although you might not be getting all the storms with regards to rain and thunder and lightning and big gusty winds on shore, if you're planning on a beach day, probably not going to be the nicest one to get out there and in the water and try to cool off a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Those winds are going to be staying offshore. In fact, you know what? I think I have them in here somewhere. There it is. Here's the GFS version of the winds, at least. Let's do the European, because we've been showing you this last couple of days. So see the winds moving by the islands now down south that have the watches and the warnings, but you see the core is staying off to the north. Now, watch the Turks and Caicos. The Turks and Caicos could get some decent wind there. That's 40s almost. And then you see...
Yeah, a little hairy there.
Yeah, a little bit. And then watch as it comes up here. Now, there's a front already there coming along the coast in the Carolinas right now. This is Wednesday afternoon, and that's a good northeast wind. And, Wilmington, by the way, that's my old stomping grounds. I graduated from UNCW, and lived at Wrightsville Beach forever. New Bern is where I was doing the weather up there, just to the north, and this northeast wind can produce quite a bit of flooding in the southern Pamlico Sound. That is that area that's right in here on the west side of Hatteras. And what happens there is you see these winds are coming in out of the north and the west, out of the north and the east, to the southwest. Well, that piles up a ton of water in here, pushes it up into these creeks. Neuse River would get a bunch as well, and you get all kinds of sound side flooding there. That is a distinct possibility. In fact, I think they really need to worry about that. They're used to it, but it is not something that they like for sure. The highest winds you can see will stay well offshore. Now, let me caution you, this is the European model. It's just a model. This is not a forecast, okay? This particular version of it had it much closer yesterday. So if I had showed you this yesterday, you would have thought that some of these higher winds were going to be onshore, and now today they're not. Okay, but we just want to kind of show you this to give you an idea of what that possibility is. And as Ross was saying, look up here towards Norfolk, Virginia, the Delmarva area, Ocean City, Maryland, Cape May. These are pretty good, what we call long shore currents, which means winds that are basically parallel to the coast, which means when you go swimming, and look, these guys, they're not back in school yet. It's about a week and a half, 2 weeks before they go back to school, so a lot of folks still at the beach. You get in the water here, and you're here in no time. Right? That current is going from left to right when you get in the beach.
I was going to mention that, Bobby. Like a lot of those northern schools, they don't go back to school until almost Labor Day sometimes, whether they're high schoolers or even college students. I'm a Penn State grad, and we didn't go back until about the last week of August. In high school, going to school in Pennsylvania, it was typically right before Labor Day. So, yeah, there's still going to be a lot of beachgoers out there before the beaches. A lot of those places, Dewey or Rehoboth up in Delaware or Maryland, they kind of shut down then once you get into September and October. So a lot of people are trying to get their last gasp of some summer fun and beach time out there. So yeah, probably not going to be the nicest conditions for a lot of those folks, while those beaches are still going to be very busy.
Yeah, really are. And you're going to end up with that rip current threat that Brianna's going to tell us about here in just a minute. I wanted to show you real fast the ensembles, because we've been showing you that last couple days. That's the Euro, and you can see that generally it's keeping it off towards the, it's coming back, okay? Look at the GFS. I'm going to compare that, and that's pretty close. And in fact, if we put them over top of each other, look, that's a lot to look at. I get it. But you see the gap here, and then Bermuda's right in here. So it's going to be closer to Bermuda, but still, they're starting to see a little bit more of the same thing, a little bit more agreement there, which is good to know. Now, here's something else that's really cool, because those models flip-flop, and we call it a windshield wiper effect, right? They go back and forth, like the European was middle of the gap, and then it went over towards the Hatteras. Now it's coming back towards the middle a little bit. The Hurricane Center forecast, they don't change that much. And what you're seeing here are the last 10 center lines of the cones that they gave us. And I color-coded them so that obviously the red is the very latest one. But the lighter the color, the older it is. The darker the color, so this black that you see right up here, in fact, I can zoom in on that, that is the very latest. The red is the very latest, but that black area is the one that was right before it, this line that you see right here. So it was kind of out here in the grays. You see that it was there, then it went here, and now it's right there. So they shifted, but notice they don't shift a whole lot, right? And that's really good. They're very good at it. Look at the cone. The cone will look like it actually shifts just a little bit more because of the fact that it's moving out in time. But you can see at one point the thought was a little bit further to the north than what it is. See, we're kind of thinking it was somewhere in this range, and now at that same time it's going to be over here. So that went a little bit further to the west than what the overall forecast was calling. All right, and so you can see that now. And that is the very latest one. All right, now let's talk waves, Brianna. This is a look at the wave heights, the swell that will be formed by Erin as it comes through. And this really is that rip current risk all next week for the eastern seaboard.
Right. Many people are in line to potentially be in that rip current risk, and those waves directly relate to that rip current risk. So even Friday, things are okay for the end of this week, but as we head into later in the weekend, start of next week, that's when we're going to begin to see some of those issues. So even along the coast, we're going to see swells beginning Monday evening maybe, and already several feet by 5 p.m. Monday. So going to see that even continuing really into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week as those wave heights increase. That's also going to increase that rip current threat, and they do, the highest of those get pretty close to the coastline, so we could see swells of 9 feet, 10 feet, 4 feet, even just off of Wilmington, 6, 7 feet. So if you head up toward the Outer Banks, you could get up where that's where you get 9, 10 feet possible. And even around Charleston, you could see 6-foot waves, wave heights. So that's going to definitely lead to some issues. So if you I'm sure there will be many beachgoers. It's still summertime and still hot, so many people are still going to be heading to the beaches, and that could even impact part of the northern states as well, Maryland, New York, as Ross mentioned. So even some rip current risk there, and kids at schools there haven't gone back yet, so there could be even more people at the beaches along those areas as well. And it's really going to be all through next week that could lead to that risk of those rip currents.
Yeah, and the rip currents, that's one of the most deadly things at the beach. So if you do have any friends or family that are heading in that direction, you want them to understand about rip currents, number one, and then number two, make sure they swim near a lifeguard stand, because the lifeguard stands will have flags. They'll have a bunch of different colored flags up. You can go up to them, ask them what they all mean, but they're going to certainly be talking. You're going to see the large waves. It's going to be kind of cool to see. I'm a surfer guy, so I would love to see that. But I want to explain a little bit about the rip currents, because you can see this is kind of what it looks like. You see how the waves are breaking here? They're just coming in. It's tough to see, but this line right here, you see that line out there? That is the sandbar, okay? And what happens is the larger waves come in, they make it over that sandbar, right? And then they wash in, they wash up on the beach, okay? They turn around, they try to go back out, but guess what? They run right into this sandbar. They can't go out. But so what's it doing? It literally ends up with like a pile of water right here, and gravity isn't going to let that happen, so it's trying to find a way back. Well, the sandbar may run here and run here, but guess what? There's a lower part in the sandbar right here. And so all of this water now says, oh, okay, I found a spot. I found a spot. And that's what creates that rip current. It's literally a current of water that is going straight out to sea. Now, what happens is you're stuck in that and you're scared, right? Next thing you know, you were just going out to stand right in your waist level or whatever it is, and you were hanging out right here, and all of a sudden you're getting tossed out here. And then what people do, they instinctually just turn around, they try and swim right back to the beach. That's not what you need to do, because you'd be swimming against this current right here, right? And even Olympic swimmers would have hard times doing this, right? What we want people to do is, if that happens, number one, just tread water. Just don't panic, tread water, keep your head afloat. You'll go out, but usually what happens is, if you do go out, you don't go out all the way. It's kind of like a mushroom. It'll send you out here, and then eventually the current fades and you do something like this, right? If you are here and you're stuck in it, you can swim parallel, and then once you're out, you can swim back to the beach. Okay, so very, very important to let the kids know that, especially the don't panic part, to just float. Somebody will come get them as long as they can tread water, right? But it's very important to know, do not try and turn around and swim against that current, because that is just not, that just doesn't work, right? Especially when you get some really big waves, you get stronger currents. And guys, we were just talking before, a little fun fact, it's not a rip tide. There are no tidal effects on rip currents. Okay, it's literally a current of water, but you'll hear a lot of times people call it a rip tide. That's just a misnomer, but they are rip currents. And now, Ross, you want to tell us about this graphic? This is kind of the long range forecast graphic.
Yeah, the Climate Prediction Center puts these out. I believe it's on every Tuesday, and you can mistake me if I'm wrong, Bobby, but they put out a week 2 and a week 3 outlook. This is looking at August 20th to August 26th, and showing a pretty similar area that Erin just came from for the potential for tropical development. So that light pink shaded area, that's showing 20%. Once you start getting into the pretty hot red color there, that's showing the 40%. And then, okay, now we're going to be paying a little bit closer of attention. We're going to be watching for some more tropical waves to come off of the coast of Western Africa and begin to make their way a little bit closer to the eastern sides of the Caribbean. Similar story for week 3 there as well. So that's going to be valid from August 27th to September 2nd. That's going to be extended a little bit further westward. So that includes, similarly, eastern sides of the Bahamas, the Dominican, Puerto Rico, and the lesser Antilles there as well. So still some areas to watch, but this is what we expect, right?
Yep.
We're still not even to the peak of hurricane season. We still got about another 3 weeks until we hit that climatological or historical peak for the Atlantic hurricane season here, right?
September 10th. Absolutely. That's when we have, this is just numbers, right? This is when we tend to see more storms than anything else. But when you look at this graphic, the key is, look where we've been. We've been in the season for a while, and there's just not a lot. And then all of a sudden you get into August and boom, right up through September 10th. And then really, we don't get back down to the activity we have right now until November, Halloween. So the core of the season is August, September, October. And really, you could argue it's September and October, right? Although you can see here in August, we really start to ramp things up. So it's late August all the way through middle of October at least, and then things tend to die off pretty quickly there. You know what, guys? Having said that, I want to show you, this is the European forecast model. I don't know if it's going to go out. It's not going to go out far enough, I don't think, here. Because, let me bring out the other model.
Yeah, it does show a tropical wave, or at least a wave of moisture coming at us from the east there. I've seen that in some of the longer runs of it, Bobby.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Or at least the AI European model has for most of the week.
I've been watching those too, Ross. How do you think they're doing this year?
I think they're a bit aggressive so far. I mean, the season's early, so they've got a lot of time to, perhaps make up for some mistakes, if you want to call it that. But I feel like they've been, pretty aggressive with not only forming storms, but it seems like every single wave that comes off Africa, in the 10 to 14 day, range or outlook within the model, it's trying to spin up something somewhere. That kind of seems to be the trend so far here this season.
So I'm going to do this. This is kind of inside baseball. I'm actually editing this scene right now, guys. This is the compare models that I had, and you can see obviously we're tracking there off the Carolinas, right? That's Erin. Watch what happens down towards the Caribbean with the GFS, which it always does. See that? It's trying to take something, blow it up over Puerto Rico right there, and then bring it up through the island chain there, Turks and Caicos, up through the Bahamas. So that is what Ross was talking about when he was showing you that extended range forecast. Remember, we were talking something that was actually in that area, but especially back out towards the Cape Verde Islands, back out towards the Central Atlantic. This is the model run. Again, going to flip-flop. We get that run. The GFS we get every 6 hours. The European we get every 6 hours, but we get an extended one every 12 hours for that. Guys, anything else you'd like to add to it tonight? I mean, we're really on the cusp of, especially with Tropical Storm Erin, of number one, this thing becoming our first hurricane of the season, and rapid intensification. I mean, things are going to be changing, especially intensity-wise, pretty quickly.